Welcome everyone. This is 22nd May, the Day of Biodiversity. It's a big word, but it has multiple meanings for multiple people. For me, it's always been how many genres of flora fauna we have on this planet. Before I go further, I would like to read something written by the UN about this day, 22nd, which I think is very exemplary of what the philosophy is. So, biodiversity is the bedrock of life and a cornerstone of sustainable development. Yet, humanity is destroying biodiversity at lightning pace. The result of pollution, climate crisis, ecosystem destruction, and ultimately short term interests, fueling the unsustainable use of our natural world. Now, as we pursue sustainable development, we must transform how we produce and consume and how we value nature and deliver on the coming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, which is the world's blueprint to halt and reverse biodiversity loss. We need policies, regulations, and other incentives to support sustainable livelihoods, and build strong green economies. So that means that these governments building on progress at CBD COP16, including by delivering domestic and international finance and other financial means, are preventing harm to nature. So basically, putting these action plans into effect in the framework is our goal to help traditional knowledge empower women, girls, indigenous people, and more so. So, as the theme of this year's internationally reminds us, harmony with nature and sustainable development is humanity's path to a better world for us all. So, next, after this introduction, I look forward to the presentations from Elsie and Rituraj. I'll hand over this to our moderator, Dujidas Khushal, who's the International Secretary for HCI India. Kindly go ahead.
Hello, everybody. Namaskar. A very warm welcome to this special webinar. I think celebrating the International Day for Biological Diversity. But right now we are discussing the sad events, the death of one diver as well as the killing of tiger. Of course, then we need to rather commemorate rather than celebrate it. My name is Bijodash Koshal. And it's a privilege to serve as your moderator today. This year's theme, Harmony with Nature and Sustainable Development. This reminds us that biodiversity is not just about saving species, it is about saving ourselves. Despite all our technological progress, we remain deeply dependent on nature for food, water, medicine, fuel, shelter, and even the air we breathe. In December 2022, the global community adopted the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. I think it's a framework that attained from the Chinese and the Canadian site where it was hosted. It was a landmark agreement with 23 targets for 2030 and 5 global goals for 2050. This aim to reverse biodiversity loss, restore 20% of degraded ecosystems, and cut the spread of invasive species by half. It's a very tall target. This plan is closely tied to the Sustainable Development Goals. The message is clear. We cannot achieve sustainability without conserving biodiversity. Today's webinar is really not just a celebration, but a call to action, I'm sure. By 2025, only 5 years is remaining now to meet the near-term goals of the biodiversity framework and sustainable development goals. The time to act now. Let's begin with our first keynote address, and I'll be honored to introduce our distinguished panelists, beginning with Madam Elsie Gabriel. Let me just give her introduction. Elsie Gabriel, she is a distinguished environmentalist, ocean literacy advocate, and climate change consultant with a robust track record of leadership in sustainability and education. She is the founder of Young Environmentalists Programs Trust and Ocean School of India and currently serves as the national coordinator for oceans with the Climate Reality Project in India. Elsie holds a postgraduate degree in island development and biodiversity from the International Institute for Environment and Development. She is a life member of both the Ocean Society of India and UN Volunteers and serves as India Ambassador for Ocean Quest Global International. Her credentials include certification in environmental law, mass communication, climate change mitigation, and ocean education. She's also a PADI certified advanced diver, HSA certified diver, and Harvard Business School alumnus. So that's a pretty wonderful profile of her. Now, may I request Madam Elsie Gabriel to begin her talk.
Thank you so much. I'm truly humbled by this elaborate introduction, really humbled. And I thank the organization and the team and Raj for having me here at this celebration of World Biodiversity Day. In fact, it is a day to celebrate, and the very fact that we gather many more and multiply our measurable impact through education, through knowledge sharing and data sharing, it's so important that it is celebrated through this webinar, and it's going to be a very impactful hour for sure. So it's exactly 11 years since I was trained by former Vice President Al Gore in the Climate Reality Project in Rio. And when I came back to India, I gave one of my few lectures on climate reality presentations. And it was amongst one of those early days that during one of those conversations, there was a student who asked me the relationship between oceans and climate. And that's where my journey started on ocean education and connecting the dots. And I know it is World Biodiversity Day, but 71% of the planet is covered in oceans and water. And 90% of our inhabitants occupy the oceans, are in the oceans, actually. So I'm fighting to put oceans on top of the biodiversity and ecology agenda when it comes to fighting climate change. And that's where my journey started, all from a young student who really opened my eyes. And he shared how they've never been to a beach, never seen the ocean. And then I realized that in the global south, especially my own backyard and my own country, needed ocean education, ocean literacy. And therefore, I incorporated these modules into the climate reality presentations and started my journey from there. And of course, made ocean a very, very pivotal point of education for my climate reality project presentations and education. So that's where I really started. And your question on, what are the challenges which you outlined today is, of course, there are challenges, like I was just discussing, that in handling oceans, if our populations and many landlocked nations as well do not know about the oceans, they don't know the various aspects of the oceans, they don't know what effects the ocean has on the climate and on us, and they don't know what our effects are on the ocean, vice versa. How can citizens, scientists, and students know how to save the ocean? How will they know what is ocean conservation? How will they know that the ocean forms an integral part of biodiversity? So therefore, today, celebrating World Biodiversity Day, I'd like to put ocean on the agenda and take this forward. I'm also, today is a good day, actually, for young environmentalists. we've been chosen as a mentor, official mentor for the SOA Foundation, Save Our Oceans Foundation mentor for the fellowship for youth. So with the young environmentalists leading on that, it would be nice to train the future. And we always feel that the biodiversity is there, of course, with the experts, scientists, conferences, outlines, agendas, and many other formulated, outlines given by our global governments and the climate change departments. But India, if not the global south, is what I research and focus on, is still in the dearth of knowing more about the oceans and how it is connected to biodiversity. So therefore, we are putting this out. And our ocean literacy program, which is awarded and recognized by the UNESCO, is going out to the students. And we've authored a book on the modules of ocean literacy as well. A very integral point where you learn about biodiversity. And it's cutting out the myth that biodiversity, as many younger students in the junior classes will know that it's only about animal life, or maybe the penguins in the zoo here in Mumbai, or maybe your trees and forests and wildlife. But I also want to bring it back to tell them that there's wildlife in the marine sector, in the oceans. So I talk about the marine wildlife and also about the carbon water cycle and shipping and all the other challenges of pollution and bleaching of coral reefs and what we as the youth can do. So that's my role as the founder of Ocean School India and Climate Reality Project India, as well as Young Environmentalists, is motivating the youth to incorporate this in the curriculum. And we were very lucky to have the governor of Mumbai endorse that. And we are working on policy decision for the education department to put this on the agenda for interactive education, because India is still struggling with the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. And therefore, it is still, finding a place and a time to put this on the main curriculum. So therefore, we've suggested that it become an interactive part of the curriculum, which is including field trips, ocean trips, and even the aquatic marine systems, which are related to the marine ecosystem, because we have our lakes, our ponds, and our mangroves and rivers all across India. So how can our Indian students connect that to the ocean biodiversity? And that's what we bring to the table. So today being World Biodiversity Day, it is important to know that without blue, there can't be green. And the students have given a very good response to that, and the youth are incorporating. Many schools have come forward to take this and adopt this as part of their field trips and their credits, as well as their university community service work. And we are seeing progress, definitely. Another challenge is, of course, language. And we do bring the ocean to the classroom, and we ask the students to speak. So we make the students leaders and help them to have panel discussions and make it more interactive. That's the methodology that we use to help them to outline the biodiversity for the oceans. And I don't have to outline again and tell you that it is a pathetic sight when you do see the ocean flooded and you do see films, you do see Instagram videos and what have you on Facebook and everything. But right here in our backyard, just day before yesterday, a part of Mumbai in Andheri, Sakinaka, went down in floods. And it was full of garbage and plastic floating, and it was really pathetic. And then I said, oh my God, like tomorrow is Biodiversity Day, and look what we have here. And then bringing into focus for this webinar, I'd like to say that we need all stakeholders most strongly to be on board. And because if the government, citizens, as well as residents and community citizen scientists are not on board together, there needs to be more uniformity and unity in bringing this solution on board with measurable action. So we've come a long way in working with the Powai Lake here also in Mumbai, a very rich biodiversity, a wetland body. So that makes excellent, background for our students. So I'd like to share here that the challenges that you have on explaining Biodiversity Day and taking it beyond this webinar, when it's over after 1 hour, what are we going to do? So even if you have a nala or a river or a pond or water hyacinths, or if you have just, any water bodies, and even plastics right in your own home, in your bathrooms, in your kitchen, behind your kitchen doors, do a plastic audit. So you don't have to belong to the you don't have to belong to the islands. And you can be, I always tell my students that they can celebrate, helping with pollution and our biodiversities right where we are at home and in the classroom. And that's what it begins with all of us. So my focus working is on the youth, and this is how far we've come. And of course, we were happy to be part of the Venice Declaration for ocean biodiversity in Venice. So we contributed to the United Nations Venice Declaration. That was a landmark. And we are working on now with the UNESCO Blue Threads that belongs to indigenous communities and islands. And of course, everybody knows that India is a peninsula surrounded totally three sides by oceans. And we have a huge coastal community working together on its marine biodiversity and its ocean backyard. But there are islands here in India. The havelocks have about 6, and then we have 35 islands, out of which 10 are inhabited in the Lakshadweep Islands, where I work, and they do not belong to the SIDS. That's the small island nations. So therefore, they do not get funding. They do not get the equality of information, data sharing, which the SIDS get globally. Small island nations get globally. So I'm trying to push for islands across not only India, but other Asian countries, global south, which do not belong to small island nations, but bear the same brunt. They bear the same ocean disasters, tsunamis and floods, and high sea level rise and bleaching of corals and pollution. And therefore, I'm trying to get our islands onto the Committee of the Small Island Nations, which is climate justice and biodiversity for the oceans. So that's my background for now.
Oh, thank you, Madam Gabriel, for the wonderful your declaration as well as your deliberations on these issues. And we have got some questions which we have compiled out of discussion within ourselves, and I'd just like to ask few of them. First questions is, of course, it is on the biodiversity loss and why it matters. The first question is that life began in the oceans. What are the challenges to marine conservation, and how can we protect our oceans?
Life began in the oceans, but during the course, I think the ocean took a back step and it was put at hindsight. And slowly, we did start with the first United Nations Ocean Conference in New York. And then I was there for the second one as a plenary speaker, pushing for the youth to come hands-on on the deck to, fight for the ocean biodiversity. So these are the challenges, like the youth getting left behind. We do have scientists, we do have our researchers, we do have oceanographers, we do have marine biologists. But what about youth being given a chance to bring their expertise, innovation, next generation digital expertise also into helping to save the ocean biodiversity? So it is important that this challenge will be overcome through collaboration with the government and the global education departments. I mean, this is going to be the third ocean conference in France, Nice, which I am being invited for. And I'll be representing again that it is integral that we cannot continue to have conferences if we do not get more countries to pledge, commit, sign on the dotted line that they need the global education departments and from all over the world, more nations to join in. Brazil has joined in, Canada has joined in, and I'm pushing for India, and we all need to push for more countries all over the world, wherever we work, all of us as experts in the climate and ocean departments, to get the government to acknowledge and sign on the dotted line. And this needs to come to the forefront. And hopefully, the Ocean Conference in June 3rd to the 13th will bring about measurable impact and bring the government to hear our cries here in the global south.
Thank you so much. The next question is that you have been a diver and a passionate advocate for marine biodiversity. Tell us about the initiative to revive the coral reefs and the ocean literacy programs in Lakshadweep and in other parts of the world.
As a deep sea diver, it's wonderful to see a kaleidoscope of corals, turtles chasing, swimming between whales, and seeing the beautiful, colorful rainforests of the ocean. That's the reef. And I invite everyone here at this webinar, do join us and come diving and see the ocean biodiversity. And in October, after the monsoons, especially in the global south, the oceans are closed for 3-4 months, and we are on red alert and disasters again. But then I invite everyone, especially the student communities, to come and discover what the ocean can offer you as a career. Our students need to know if they want to save it, they can also make a career with the ocean, and SDG 14. So today's theme is for sustainable development. So I do work on very strongly with the Lakshadweep Islands on sustainable tourism, accessible sustainable tourism as well. I'm certified HSA diver from USA, where in the times of tsunamis and ocean disasters, I help train the Army, Navy, and the disabled, as well as diving instructors and experts, to come forward and help the ocean communities during these ocean disasters and help people with cognitive disabilities, unseen disabilities in ocean areas. So that's my expertise for that. But it is important that we get on to skill training where oceans are concerned and more career-oriented subjects on oceans at a much earlier stage in the curriculum to promote ocean biodiversity. And we're trying to enforce that so far.
Great. Thank you. I also echo your emotion in the sense that scuba diving in Lakshadweep has been one of my best and superlative experience of my life. I mean, it is the kaleidoscopic world that you have talked about. Immediately I could relate to my experience also. Thank you for
Yes,
bringing
Havelock
that issue.
Islands. We have
Yes.
Radhanagar Beach in Havelock, which is number 3 in the world by BBC. It's absolutely pristine, 25 meters of visibility, beating any dive spot in the world more than the Caribbean's, Mauritius, Bali, Great Barrier Reef. I think our Indian Oceans in both the Havelock, Andamans, and Lakshadweep are absolutely other 32 ocean dive sites that I've been to. So I'm really proud to, put India and its islands and beaches on the global map, and thus getting even our students to go global with their careers. And it's a win-win situation because you are encouraging youth not only to, have a career and earn a living out of careers in oceanography and marine biology and, spatial mapping, as well as pollution studies, and but also fighting for planet Earth and its biodiversity. So it's a win-win situation for these youngsters, and it's bridging the gap between us seniors and the youngsters. And one thing I really try and push for is intergenerational handover, intergenerational education. We seniors need to know that, of course, we have the wisdom, but we need the innovative skills, the new ideas, and the skill sets of the youngsters, and work together. And therefore, that's how progress can be made in the ocean biodiversity field, for sure.
So well said. Thank you. Now, you have worked with all age groups. Tell us about your work with the youth. How do you sustain their enthusiasm and inspire others to act? and innovate for the environment.
So we do work with all age groups, and our key focus is students and citizen scientists because there are some volunteers and hardworking field trip experts, as well as citizens who may be doctors, lawyers, housewives, school teachers, and even our scavengers and sewage collectors by the lake and the ocean. But they've been working over 2 decades, and they have more data and they have more knowledge, traditional knowledge from our seniors as well, and our indigenous and fishing communities, which needs to be brought to the table, which needs to be included into the agenda for the oceans. And that's what I'm trying to get to bridge the gap between our seniors and our elders. And our elders are a powerhouse of knowledge, and that needs to be incorporated in the new methodology adopted by the youth, taking the ocean conservation for this planet's biodiversity forward. So these are the areas that we are working on. And the youth are responding very well. And the citizen scientists, I always tell them, you don't need to be a scientist. You don't need to have a PhD. You've done 2 decades of work, and it motivates them even more to bring to the table. And today we have over 2,000 schools already under us, where we've conducted the ocean literacy program, bringing the ocean to the classroom, right from kindergarten and tiny tots of 3, 4 years old, mother, child, student bonding, as well as teachers training, as well as showing them the various marine biodiversity, as well as helping PhD students incorporate ocean biodiversity topics for their PhD research. So that's the top of our agenda to help more science driven students to take up ocean related biodiversity research and join our esteemed colleges and universities that we have in India, of course. And they are going global, a lot of scholarships, a lot of funding, and they are putting India on the map. Slow and steady, but that's how it all began a decade ago. And I'm happy that it's progressing.
Thank you. Your perspective is really enlightening. We'll come back to more on this, your thought process later on. So, meanwhile, I just request everybody to post your questions in the chat at any time during this session so that we can bring back all this question at the end of the session. So, may I just call upon and request Mr. Rituraj Phukan right now. So, let me just introduce Mr. Rituraj Phukan. Rituraj Phukan is a director of Healthy Climate Initiative. He is an environmental writer. That is his really competence. And TEDx speaker, adventurer, climate activist, sorry, and naturalist based out of Assam. He is the founder of Indigenous Peoples Climate Justice Forum, a co-founder of Smiley Academy, a national coordinator for biodiversity with the Climate Reality Project in India, and a member of the International Union for Conservation of Nature. Rituraj has been an invited speaker and accredited observer at several UN climate conferences in various COP programs and UNCCT COP, as well as at G20 and W7 G7 events. So he has been a member of 4 polar expedition for climate change and biodiversity studies. He authored the chapter Biodiversity in a Warming World in 2019, and that is Amazon #1 bestseller, Climate Abundant. Other books include a recent international bestseller, that is Green Day, where he was also featured besides contributing a chapter, and last year's Biological Apocalypse. So that's a pretty wonderful details about our Rituraj Phukan. So I just request him to present his thought process today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ghoshal, and it's always a pleasure to hear about all the wonderful work you are doing, Elsie, especially with the youth, motivating them to get involved in marine conservation of the biodiversity in the marine areas, which basically is a reflection of our past as well as our future. Life began in the oceans, as it has been reiterated a few times today, but also it is, I think, a vital indicator of the health of our planet overall. I would like to start with the results of the just concluded UN Biodiversity Conference, actually. As you would all remember, in 1992 at the Rio Earth Summit, the three UN conventions were formed, and all of them were quite interrelated. The UN Convention on Framework Convention on Climate Change, the UNFCCC, the UN Convention to Combat Desertification, and the UN Convention on Biological Diversity, that is the CBD. And last year was very, very important because in October, November, one after the other, all the three conference of parties or the COPs took place. The results, of course, were not very encouraging in all the three. I happened to attend two of them. Uh, but the biodiversity COP, which took place in Cali, Colombia, was postponed because, very interestingly, at the international conference, there was a lack of quorum on the final day, concluding day. So enough delegates were not present to actually pass to sign an agreement, and it was postponed, and it just ended in March, end of March this year. It has taken a very significant step in safeguarding global biodiversity because it has laid out the financial roadmap. During your introduction, Mr. Ghoshal, you had mentioned about the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. That is a framework which is, I think, very, very vital. It provides the roadmap on how to save, restore our biodiversity. But the problem is we need finances for that. And that Kunming-Montreal Protocol had projected that we need about $200 billion annually from 2030 to start restoring biodiversity and getting where we need to get there. However, that financial roadmap was, as always, finance is the problem. It's the stumbling block or the roadblock in the global negotiations. And however, finally, when the talks resumed in Rome in March, they were able to allocate about $30 billion. They recognize that we need to mobilize $200 billion, but they have started with 30 billion in contributions from the wealthier nations to the developing countries. So this is a long-term financial mechanism. It is designed to ensure that the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, or GBF, will be operationalized as soon as it is possible. The delegates, they convened in Rome, and they also passed various other, judgments regarding the Cartagena Protocol, which ensures there is biosafety on how you use the bioresources of the world, and then also the Nagoya Protocol to share access and benefit from the biodiversity of the world. Anyway, I live in Assam, and as you know, Assam is part of the Eastern Himalayan region, which encompasses one of the most diverse areas in the entire world, comprising not one but two biodiversity hotspots, and with parts of China, parts of Myanmar, Nepal, and Northeast India, and of course Bangladesh, Bhutan, being part of this Eastern Himalayan region. Our region is not only home to an immense number of biodiversity, but also over 200 indigenous communities who have always lived very sustainably with nature. They are, all of these communities are very, very dependent on the biodiversity around them. So it is their inherent capacity, it is their inherent ability to ensure that biodiversity is always restored and protected, and whatever is taken from nature is returned, and there is only sustainable use. They have always been sustainable even before the word was invented. However, we are seeing, because of climate change, we are seeing a lot of new challenges coming up. We are seeing a lot of biodiversity loss, which is impacting the health and immunity. And I would like to stop my, opening remarks with a reference to one incident that happened during the COVID pandemic lockdown to illustrate how important biodiversity is for indigenous communities. My good friend Jadhav Payang, who is known as Forest Man of India, and myself were supposed to travel somewhere, and the government had made it mandatory to get the COVID-19 vaccination before traveling, right, or before access to public services. However, he would not take the vaccine, and I was a little bit worried that we will not be able to travel. And finally, one day, his daughter calls me up and says, we have not taken the vaccine because nobody in our village has ever been vaccinated. And that was, something quite a revelation, because, people who, all of us who live in, towns and cities and in urban areas, we are used to growing up with the vaccines. So we went to the administration, and through the administration, to the manufacturers of the vaccine. And they came back to us after about 3 weeks, and they took the vaccine. But the more question therein was, where do they get their immunity from? If they do not get vaccinated when they're born, what ensures their health
Yeah.
and well-being? And it turned out that all the indigenous communities, all the indigenous people who live with nature are still, you know, consuming foods that are local and seasonal, still collecting and harvesting a lot of foods that grow in the wild around them. So that ensures their good health and immunity. So I always say that ensuring that indigenous people have access to the traditional foods of our ancestors should be part of any conversation about climate justice. And that basically means that we protect our biodiversity. The second question from the same lockdown period that I would like to highlight for everybody is that, remember, all the people who were living in the cities, in the towns, were dependent on rations being provided by the government during the lockdown, right? We get packets of vegetables to sustain ourselves. But that was not a problem at all in the rural areas. Everybody, indigenous people and local communities in the rural areas, were self-dependent. They had a pond behind their house with the fish, with herbs growing around it, with they had the cows in their house. They were getting their milk. They grew their own rice. Everything was there. I mean, they were happy during the lockdown. No work and all fun, right? So that is sustainability. And when you talk about sustainable development and biodiversity, I think these are the things that we need to highlight. We need to look to indigenous communities to relearn how to live sustainably with nature. We have to reestablish those connections that have been lost. Thank you.